short little time this time. We have all the time with you. But I wish I had a lot more time because I have a lot to say about this. Zen Forms and unity. Last Tuesday, we talked about Zazen, forever Zazen, being Zazen. Thursday, Debbie and Erica Wild gave beautiful little talks on, not little, but completely full talks on bowing and on Thich Nhat Hanh's walking meditation. Today, Chelsea and I, sangha as an enactment of Zen form. And then on Thursday, Constance and Marianne will give a little, I'm thinking kind of a little workshop on forms, and then we'll do a service at the end for the solstice. So I was thinking we'll see how time goes, but I wanted to say some things and then you'll say some things. And if we have time, it was really nice that there was time to ask questions. People asked about one-handed bows and all kinds of things. You never know what the important questions are. Each question is the whole universe. So it was occurring to me how to enter this. In the Lotus Sutra, which we did a couple of practice periods ago, the great revelation of the Lotus Sutra, why it's one of the great Mahayana sutras, is up till that point, everybody thought it was just Shakyamuni Buddha. Like, this guy did this great thing. And then all of a sudden, Shakyamuni Buddha says, no, sorry, I just said that sort of because you weren't going to believe me, but now maybe you're ready to believe me that there are Buddhas across time and space, and everybody is a Buddha waking up to be a Buddha. And so what is it to see each person as a Buddha? That to me feels like something essential about the Bodhisattva path and about practice and about what the embodiment of forms is. So I want to start with Zen ritual, studies of Zen Buddhist theory and practice. Looks very, very Zen. Everybody's like lined up very straight, and they all have shaved heads. And it's Stephen Hine and Dale Wright, who are really wonderful scholars. And I'm going to read you a little something about Dale Wright says at Heiji, which is the training monastery, which is Dogen's monastery in Japan, which I've been to, which is amazing, ancient and beautiful. And San Francisco Zen Center, where I lived and practiced for about a decade, is a training monastery. Then Norman Fisher's Everyday Zen, where I practiced for about 20 years, he'd been abbot, and he called it Everyday Zen because he wanted to make it clear that you don't have to be in a monastery to do this. And how do we bridge this? Because that is part of our work in this time. So I want to bring Norman's words forward a little bit. Paula Arai, who I've come to know and love as a scholar and as she trained in a woman's monastery in Japan. But then one of her first books was about everybody thinks it's happening in the monastery, and the women have all been doing it at home forever. Excuse me, take a look. Duh. Not kidding. And then she wrote this wonderful little book, which we spent some time with, but I'm going to bring it back to us for a minute. The little book of Zen healing that comes out of a deep monastic and a lay practice. And then Thich Nhat Hanh and Chelsea, as well as Erica, have practiced deeply in the Thich Nhat Hanh lineage. My one story I want to tell is I was at Tassajara practicing in a practice period deep in the winter and the cold and back then you did study hall and there wasn't electricity, there were a little, I can't remember what those lamps were called,
Kerosene.
no, kerosene was one, but the other was the Aladdin lamps. And you'd sit there in the dark and it was freezing and you were very studious and very zen. And I don't know how it got down to Tassajara, but it was when Thich Nhat Hanh's, it must have been his walking meditation, but whatever his first book was, came out. And somehow it was in my hands and I was sitting, I mean, this is a very self-centered story, but I was sitting in the dining room, reading this book and thinking, this is it. Whatever this person is talking about, this is the bridge. This is what I've known in my heart as an expression of whatever it is that we're doing deep in this training monastery. And Thich Nhat Hanh has changed Western Buddhism, and it will continue to change. So we'll see. I'm going to pay attention. I want to read you a little bit from Dale Wright's Zen ritual, because mostly because I've been wanting to pick up this book for years. It's been on my shelf, and now this is my excuse. So I'll talk really fast. Role of ritual in Zen. Approaching the grand entrance to a Heiji, one of Japan's premier Zen Buddhist temples, I am both excited and intimidated. I understand that once I enter this gate, every moment of my life for the next 3 days, we'll try for the next whatever, but for him for 3 days, will be subsumed under the disciplinary structures of Zen ritual. Although I have already trained in the ritual procedures of the Soto school, which is our tradition, this is the head temple of its founder, the renowned master Dogen, and I realize how exacting and demanding their adherence to proper ritual will be. Upon entrance, along with a handful of other lay people who have accepted the challenge of this brief meditation retreat, I am given specific instructions on how to conduct myself through virtually every moment of my stay. This is if you go into a practice period in Tassajara, this is exactly what happens. Yeah. The details seem endless and excruciatingly difficult to master. How exactly to enter the meditation hall, to address the teacher, to bow, to hold one's bowl while engaging in mealtime rituals, and on and on. Where best to draw the mental line between actual Zen ritual and other procedural routines of the monastery baffles me. But virtually all life in a Zen monastery is predetermined, scripted, and taken out of the domain of human choice. Which is why I loved it so much. No, that's a joke. Some of these routinized life activities stand out from others as explicit religious ritual by virtue of their obvious sanctity, by their relation to the founding myths or stories of the Zen tradition, and more. But all the routines of the Zen setting appear to be treated, all the routines of the Zen setting appear to be treated as essential to the life of Zen. And all life appears to be ritualized in some sense. Now instructed in proper ritual procedures, my brief immersion in Zen monastery monastic life begins. The Zen life is overwhelmingly a life of ritual. So we do a little bit of this, but this is the ground on which this rests. I'm just going to read you a couple of other passages that I marked here. He says, what if we ask what kinds of rituals are characteristic of Zen Buddhism? And then he says that brings you face to face with one. It's difficult to answer because they've changed over time and differ from sect to sect. course, every sect thinks they have the ritual. I mean, that's just what religious traditions do, right? They vary from region to region. And the other is, should any regularly repeated practice performed in a standardized manner be understood as a ritual? So what is this ritual and what are we doing? And then again, the question is, how do we bridge it into a life of a layperson? When I was ordained as a lay priest. Norman Fisher said, there are no priests who were not lay people. None of us are monastics. Everybody thought he did something radical, but he was just naming it. None of us, we go into the monastery for a while, anybody can, but we're living our lives here in the world. Zen ritual actually does something to practitioners. So what's the point of all of this, right? It shapes them into certain kinds of subjects who not only think certain thoughts, but also perceive the world and understand themselves through the patterns impressed upon them by the repeated action of ritual upon their body and mind. In other words, something happens in submitting to these rituals. Something is happening even when you come and you bow in the door in our little Zen rituals here. Something happens when we go to open sky and you spend the whole day in the rituals. It establishes a context of experience in which certain moods dominate, and desires, emotions, states of mind, and actions come to the fore. He names a few: humility, please, selflessness, mindfulness, self-control, courage, wisdom. I didn't know you were learning all that just by stopping and bowing and noticing what you put over the door frame. Zen is embodied understanding. And the mental states that practitioners achieve through it are not separate from this physical framework. We are training the body, and it is completely interrelated. And then he says something about it involves the imagination, because you actually are imagining yourself as a Buddha. These forms are all to help you imagine yourself as an upright, dignified, fully valued, fully participatory Buddha, along with all the other Buddhas in the room. That's pretty radical. You don't usually see the world that way, right? There's highers and lowers and rights and wrongs, and you're all Buddhas, bowing and sitting down. Okay, so here's a little of what Norman Fisher has to say about all this. Because when he chose to step down from being abbot, he specifically chose to soften the forms. Because he knew, as many of us knew who have lived it, there's a light and a shadow to everything. And wanted to make this accessible. We use the forms to promote awareness and to extend awareness. Our practice is primarily the practice of everyday life. In Soto Zen especially, the practice is really everyday life. But everyday life lived with awareness and fullness of presence. That's what these forms are teaching us. If we extend our awareness not only to what is going on inside of us when we sit down, but also to how we are walking, how we are standing, how we are holding our hands, how we are eating our food, and how we are chanting or striking a bell. It's going to be Dawn practice in the new year. It's a great way to practice being a Buddha or striking a bell. If we extend awareness into all those other places in our living, we begin to get the idea that meditation is not just something that happens on our cushions. It is not just an inside job. Awareness should be extended into all the times and places of our living. Our life is a totality and not just about what is going on inside of us. It is about our whole lives, where we meet one another as well as where each one of us is separate. The price of this, which is all the mistakes that we actually make, turns out to be worthwhile in itself. That's why it's so great to plunge into a ritual, to plunge into being Dawn and to make mistakes. It's so wonderful. Worlds within worlds to learn. And then when the mallet hits the bell and you can hear it sing, it's like, wow. But one isn't right, or one couldn't have happened without the other, you know? It's like, that's why we just keep doing zazen. You just never know what you're gonna learn. So he says there's 3 reasons to do the forms. One is to develop and extend our awareness. The second is it gets us in touch with our ancestors. This was passed to us. It's not just us. It's you start to feel how deep and ancient this tradition is. And you begin to feel it's not just Shakyamuni Buddha, but it's Buddha's, because you're at the Santa Cruz Zen Center, you know this trip too. Right? I'm not.
They tell me I do it wrong all the time.
Oh, wonderful, good work. My true student, no. You can feel it. Everything we're doing is people have been doing and will continue to do through time. There's something very beautiful about having something deeper than just my one little life. And the third reason is that we are creating something very beautiful. When we have a way to harmonize one another, we feel the beauty of our interconnectedness, and we feel the rhythm and shape of our being together as one body of practice. This body, this Buddha really inspires us all. So at least you think it's just Norman or Dale Wright. I'm just gonna Paula Arai. She gives 10 principles. She calls them the ways of healing, but it says these ways of healing are living our lives as ritual. Again, this came out of her monastic practice, and this came out of her studying women doing rituals in their home in Japan. And the one that I want to bring forward is engaging in rituals. Here it is again. But right before that is living body mind. To actualize our true nature, the most effective way is through body practices. Again, body practices. The mind is capricious. You notice? I just put it all over the place. Therefore, train the body, enter through form. Rituals affect the body, even if the mind isn't conscious of what is going on. Real life is messy and organic. Ritual bridges. Ritual acts as if everything is alive and personal. It tries to make sense out of the raw materials of lived experience. It enters timeless and deep space. There's a felt sense of connection that's timeless. Rituals work with and guide emotions, narrow the focus, helps calm and expand perspective. And it works through the senses. I so miss burning incense. I know you can't do incense because people are allergic to incense, and so it was passed. We just stopped doing it. But the sound of the bells, and the smell of the rose petals, even if you can't smell them. And just the standing up and sitting down, feeling the feet on the floor and awareness of the breath in the body. These things are amazing. Nobody stops to do this anymore. It cultivates wisdom in the bones. It engages all the senses and affirms order and helps us be aware of our surroundings. And she says it creates limbic changes, increased social cohesion, and chanting with a group. Absolutely, we're no longer alone. We join our voices together, bound together. All of this, something happens on a cellular level. So let me just, before I hand this to Kelsey, let me see. Makes you fall in love with the forms. I mean, whatever they, because a lot of people have resistance to Zen. It's like, what are all those forms? And then they go out the door and they go to Vipassana, which is wonderful too. I mean, Vipassana is beautiful too. But there's something beautiful and embodied, and it's what we do together, which is sangha. We create this container together. Not on says. The greatest talent is to know how to live in harmony with others. If you hadn't noticed, we seem to have a little bit of trouble with this. Our challenge is to bring the flavor of Zen into the heart of what we do. We do our best to cultivate calm, clarity, and mindful presence. When there is pure harmony, joy, and love in the group, this is living Dharma. So it lifts all these words in the sutras and all the things that we think this practice is, or we wish it was, or we wish it wasn't. And it becomes alive right here in each one of us, and we're enacting it together. That's the beauty of forms done as an alive practice. I've seen forms done as things, and I've seen forms be imposed on people in a way that's hurtful. It's part of why I think Norman, when he came, wanted to do everyday Zen differently. And it's beautiful to be trained in the forms, but the forms are living, breathing gifts passed to us by Buddhas throughout time and space. And it is our joyful job as a sangha to
Question, did you want to move or do you want to do the tech over here?
She'll take this. She'll have it, yeah. That's good because there's no cords.
yeah, go for it then. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, and then I have to bundle myself back up over here. Can you okay over here? Am I joining audio or no?
No.
No, just leave it.
Just leave it there. Okay.
Changed.
Okay. Well, I think that's a beautiful entry point of this living, breathing thing that is a form that is our sangha. And that feels almost a little bit abstract to me, that doing sangha is like a form. But in a sense, when I bring it in through that lens of, I think so beautifully, it's alive. This practice is alive. I can touch it. I can taste it. And Thich Nhat Hanh said many times that the next Buddha will be a sangha. It will be the collective. And Chris invited me to speak a little bit on that. And then what my experience in Thich Nhat Hanh lineage has been like, and particularly what it felt like. And I sat with that question just yesterday and maybe the day before, and a single word came up as a starting point for my contemplation, and that word was valued. I felt so valued as I participated in that sangha. For a little history, my daughter, who's 20 now and launched, but through her years growing up, we would travel to Deer Park Monastery and do family retreat there most years. We did another retreat in Toronto and went to France and studied at Plum Village. So we had a lot of exposure in family sangha with Thich Nhat Hanh. And before the pandemic, for a brief time, I helped facilitate a little Thich Nhat Hanh Sangha here in Sebastopol. And it just sort of couldn't stay together. There weren't enough of us. But my name and number must be floating around there sometimes, because I still get calls from people occasionally that say, "What's up with the Thich Nhat Hanh Sangha?" And I say, it didn't stick. It didn't last for the time being. It's unformed. But do you know about Dharma Heart Zen? Because it has the same taste. And we talk about that sometimes. You hear that flavor of Zen. The flavor of Thich Nhat Hanh Sangha to me is the same flavor here that Chris guides us in, and that we bring in together a sense of all belonging here, a sense of being valued and of co-creating this space. And it really actually brings tears to my eyes, because I have experience in places where that's not the case, where we show up and we don't feel valued, and we don't have a sense of belonging. And to be able to come here and to know that we're all working together to bring forward that energy of Avalokiteshvara. And Thich Nhat Hanh would talk about that when we listen deeply, the energy of Avalokiteshvara is here. And that's what I think is the aliveness, the energy in the form of Sangha, is our deep-hearted compassion and listening to one another, the showing up for and with one another. And it feels truly as one of the three jewels, one of the triple treasures. And I have some notes. So feeling a sense of purpose as a layperson and as a family person, that the teachers and monastics were sincerely engaging in their practice for collective liberation that included me. That was an experience of Sangha and Thai's tradition that I had and that I have here with each of you. Sense of purpose. And it's that feeling that if we're lucky, we have when there's a teacher, maybe in elementary school, maybe in high school, that we know really cares about us, like that teacher, that feeling that we get if we've received that to me feels like an aliveness of Sangha, that we're here caring for one another with such sincerity. And in the Thich Nhat Hanh tradition, there's some language of going as a river. I love that, the sense of Sangha as a river, one Sangha body. So no one's vying for attention to stand out. We're here with self dropping away into something much more beautiful and much more of a process that's becoming together. And then some practices that I experienced in Thai's tradition that support this. Practices and qualities like playfulness. And I think we get to experience that here also, that there's a sincerity and a playfulness. In Thai's tradition, there's songs, and we come together at the beginning of any meeting and sing. And if you can get your hands on a Plum Village songbook, do it. It's so much fun. And my voice is horrible. When my daughter was very young, I came very near doing a project with Betsy Rose. If you know, Betsy Rose has a lot of Dharma music. And she just said, "Get over it, Chelsea." Just sing with your daughter. I would say I would be so embarrassed to sing, like running family programs at Zen Center or with my daughter. She said, "Just get over that. Just sing anyways." So that sense of breaking through discomfort and coming into playfulness through song. I think another thing that supports these feelings there, this valued and belonging, is an accessibility to even the forms. In Thai's tradition, in the Plum Village tradition, after Zazen, there's a tiny little bell that's rung to massage your knees and to take care of your legs before, and then another, and we all stand up together. It's so sweet. Just, oh, yeah, my legs are sore. So this great care that's given. Mm. And less Zazen, but more mindfulness, more actually doing things together, working together, cleaning the soup pots. I spoke about the deep listening and this energy of Avalokiteshvara that's here. A sense of humility that was modeled through the monastics and through Thai himself. I think maybe the last thing I want to say is, Thich Nhat Hanh has so many gathas, little verses for practicing and coming together. And as I was reflecting on this and writing some notes, I heard his voice saying, darling, I am here for you. And it's so sweet if you've ever heard him express it. I've heard that language in places where if we're having conflict with someone we care about, that we can just repeat it to ourselves or say it to them. Oh, darling, I'm here for you. In such sincerity and humility. And that to me also feels like the living energy of sangha that we're giving to one another, this deep understanding. Darling, I'm here for you.
Oh.
Oh, now speaking of forms, do I have to do the 14 and now and then turn it around?
Chelsea, when some of us went back down to Tassara for the last firefighter retreat, we're not gonna meet the next 2 weeks. I forgot to say that, we'll be back January 6th after this week, but Chelsea got to be the Misha at Tassara. And boy, did they put her through. She did great, but boy, it's a real, it's a beautiful training. And it's wonderful to me that we are deeply rooted in form and tradition. And that we are co-creating this with and for the whole world, because it's an alive tradition. Otherwise, it's just somebody's idea. And you always want to proceed with great awareness. You're not throwing the baby out with the bath water. That's and it's one of the. One of the wonderful things about the Vipassana tradition, at least looking at it from where I sit, is they can change faster. Is they've been able to cultivate and bring in more teachers of color and young people whereas in Zen the training takes a long time. It's like, it's sort of embarrassing. 5 years, it's like, well, now it's just beginning. But it's because it's a body practice. It's repetition. That's the training. A lot of it is repetition. And there's a little of anyway, can't change too fast and things need to change, obviously. So we're on the cutting edge of that all the time. And what is this and how do we do it? And what are we doing? And to me, in the most profound way, the question always is, the proof in the pudding is, are we becoming more kind? Is Bodhisattva vow, it's the heart of it. Otherwise, it's just a bunch of stuff that you're doing because you think you should, somebody told you to. So we have a little bit of time. Would this be a good time? I mean, we can go into like, what's all this bring up for you? Or would it be a good time just to have a discussion and whatever's here and whatever questions and.
Discussion.
Is that good?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Hmm.
And we look for you guys on screen too.
Is it possible to do things like that in here, like sing the songs like Take That Han does? That was. I've heard that.
I was thinking when Chelsea was talking, is it would be really sweet, this summer. This coming summer to do a day where we could be more playful and we could do things like that. I mean, the question always is. How to best use the time that we have, and we could try too many different things and then we're gonna miss something. But I think that might be fun to do.
Like a Zen sing along.
Sorry.
I may not look like it, but I'm a true person of Zen. I really know that it's like my favorite thing is the Poly Refuges, because it's melodic. And we come from a melodic tradition, and I also. It's as a true person of Zen, it's so important to, in the times that we have to chant, to get the Heart Sutra in our bodies and to get the Metta Sutta. I mean, to me, it's amazing that I can do the Heart Sutra without looking at a chant card. And I mean, that's may sound like what, but then it's in your body. And that just takes time. So
Yeah.
we want to be careful and aware of how we deepen.
Yeah, can I speak to that, to it? Yeah, when I was thinking about this here, the thought came in my mind too of like, oh yeah, it would be so sweet if we did songs here. But yet the thing that I think makes a difference is that in the Plum Village lineage, it's international. You know, I don't even know how many thousands and millions of people are doing that. And then each of those little verses is what they're practicing with, and it's coming forward in that specific taste of Thai lineage. So when I've tried to hold mindfulness groups or secular groups, or even at Zen Center with the kids and bring song in, it ends up kind of crashing because one, I don't have any capacity, and two, it's not in the fabric of our lineage. So it's not held the way the Heart Sutra or the Metta Sutra are held in the fabric of this lineage. And it always just feels a little bit like, well, that was cute, that was fun, but it's not quite the same because it's not in the Maha body of the lineage.
Interesting way to say it.
Yeah.
Ellis.
Hi. You talking about how all of this is a body practice. I just have a little story to tell. My next door neighbor is Japanese. She's in her 60s, she's single, and she recently broke her leg. So Misha and I have been spending a lot of time with her, sitting on her couch and chatting and bringing her soup, and it's really sweet to get to know her. So the other day, she said something to me and I said, oh, you know, I don't know if I've ever said this to you, but I practice with like a Zen sangha. And she said, oh, and do you chant? And I said, oh yeah, we chant, you know, where I sit on Tuesday mornings very, very early. The chanting is we do a lot of chanting for like an hour. And we chant the Heart Sutra in Japanese. And I said, yeah, and she said, do you know the Heart Sutra? And I said, yeah, we chant it in Japanese. I've always wondered, does it actually like mean anything? like literally, you know, because in English it kind of means something literally. It kind of does and kind of doesn't. And I said, does it mean anything? And she said, oh, get me that. And she pointed at some obscure thing on a desk, and we went over there, and it's this maybe like a wall hanging all in Japanese, and she said it's the Heart Sutra, and then she bowed and she chanted the entire thing
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
in Japanese, and then she finished and she bowed and said, "Oh my God, Toku, thank you so much for that." Does what does it mean to you? And she said, it doesn't mean anything literally, but what it means is I feel it inside of me because I listen to my mother chant it every morning. So for her, like, she kind of, her eyes got so distant, and I could tell that where she was herself as a child in Japan with her mother.
Ancestors.
Her ancestors, yeah.
Yeah.
It gave me like these full body goosebumps of just, oh my God, my next door neighbor. Yeah. So thank you.
Yeah, that's one of my most prized possessions is early on at Zen Center, Mayumi Oda, who some of you may know as an artist, would come and paint in the fields and practice with us. And her practice was every morning before she came up for Zazen, she would calligraphy the Heart Sutra. And then she would pass them out to all of us. So I have one framed, actually, Bruce framed it. It's so beautiful, you know?
Wow.
So that's, I mean, we're not Japanese. It was really, it's important to do some of these in English. And the great thing is that even when they're in English, we still can't understand them. But, and we've talked about, so here's another little story, is there's a Soto Shu, which is the Soto Zen, I mean, there's all these organizations that are Japanese based, and then the Americans tried to create their own organization because we're not Japanese, you know, it's like we need to be able to do this in our own way, but at a certain point, someplace along the way, the Soto Shu decided that kind of by committee, they were going to translate the Heart Sutra in a certain kind of way so that no matter what temple you went into all over the world, everybody would be able to say the same thing, which is actually kind of beautiful. But it was really interesting because Buddhists aren't attached at all. We know that. So that all of us who had been at Zen Center chanting it one way for all those years, this was like heresy. I mean, this is in my body, and you're telling me to do another word? And anyway, there was kind of a word every day Zen for a while. And Norman in his wisdom just said, we don't have to do it, we can do it the old way. And then eventually it kind of, you know, it's like, now we can do it the other way. But there is something about you can hear it. You can when you enter the forms, they're timeless, and then they're not Japanese anymore because you've been doing them so long. It's just that's your body, just the bell rings and your body does something. There's something that's timeless and transcendent in that again only happens through repetition. Yeah.
It's so funny that we're having this conversation because this morning, like, so I know like the Zen Center Heart Sutra is just like my mind like memorizes things very easily. It's like all like Spice Girl lyrics and Robert Frost poetry. It's like all in there. And I had like the Heart Sutra was kind of like in there, and then I started practicing at Stone Creek, and they use a totally different translation.
I know. My brain gets completely scrambled.
And yeah, and so in the beginning I was just like, and there's like a sense of belonging when you go into a new sangha and they're chanting the same thing, and you're like, oh, I know the chant that you guys are doing, like we're doing it. And so in the beginning it like felt so weird in my body, and then today was the day that we have when we have a well-being ceremony once a week is when we do the Heart Sutra. And today was the day where I just didn't pick up my chant book, and I was like, the other translation is in there now, and I don't even know where it came from. It's just like here it is, and it's cool. And I also am just thinking about I did a Zen retreat for teenagers at my school in November, and it was so sweet to see. We like turned my classroom into a Zendo. We did like work practice, and it was just so sweet to see them like these silly teenagers, there's like freshman boys, you know, like, and there's something about having the forms and like as soon as the classroom turned into a Zendo and they learned how to bow to their cushion and how to take their shoes off, it's like something changed. And I've done a lot of like teaching mindfulness to teens and it's like it's hard to get them to take it seriously if they're not like bought in, but the forms like transformed the whole space and like the sangha and for them and it was just cool to see. It's like, oh, it's like so simple, but it's seeing it change them made me reflect on how it's like changed me too.
I had this sense of somehow the body fits in. I mean, there is something when you give yourself just to service and the sound of the bells and the roll down and your body just starts doing something that it's not you doing it anymore. Anybody on screen?
Yeah.
Yeah, Deborah. Cause you studied with Rick too, yeah.
Okay, hi, everybody. I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with this, but at one point at the Rochester Zen Center, Philip Kaplow, his Dharma heir, Tony Packer, decided, and she'd already taken over the center, and she decided she wanted to let go of all the forms. I'm not sure, but I'm imagining it was about non-attachment and how one's ego could get attached, you know, who has a rakusu, who doesn't. You know, it was a possible way to kind of misinterpret some things. And so she told that to Roshi, and he said he nearly fell out of his seat and came back from Mexico, and they had this huge meeting of all the people in the sanghas. What were they going to do? And it was really a rough time. And he said, this is a phase that senior students sometimes go through where they want to get rid of all the forms. And he was trying to be encouraging, but in the end, he said, you need a cup to pour the tea into.
Oh, that's
That's good. That's good.
So Tony left and did her own thing, and his sangha came back, his teachers came back. But it was a big thing about forms.
I'll also add to that is because that happened when I was at San Francisco Zen Center and it rocked all of our boats. And actually it was also helpful because there was a certain
Really?
way that when you pick something up and you make it special. And then somebody says, questions the whole thing, when you pick it back up again, you pick it back up differently. You pick it back up with, it's kind of like when you rebel against your family and
Yeah,
you don't have to go back in and do the whole thing, but you go back in with a different kind of awareness and what's important and what serves and what doesn't serve. So she was actually an important person because she just dared to question it all. Yeah.
I didn't realize it reverberated across Zen communities.
May I ask one question? Sorry to speak twice. Like I said earlier, you know, when I sit with the Sangha, I get corrected all the time when we go to Tassajara, you know, and also what do we do with that little person inside that says, I'm never coming back here? Because sometimes I have to take care of that little person all day.
For those of us who have been part of Zen centers, looking at Debbie and others, I'm sorry. I actually, to me, it's why this is about kindness. And there's different ways to teach the rules, and maybe people, I mean, bless their little hearts, but
Thank you.
So, yeah, I'll just say that, you know, the stuff is that one of the things I keep saying to our, you know, not because I have to tell them, but because it's such a thing for me is we're gonna teach these forms, but we're gonna do it with kindness. It's so, couple of summers ago being at Tussahara, and there was actually a kind Eno. I probably embarrassed him. I just kept telling him how wonderful he was and it's just, yeah. So our way is, you could teach things, we know that, you can teach things with kindness, you can model things with kindness. Okay, and we'll find times to sing and also just speak with, you know, there's mostly, I hope what you're coming away from a little bit is a sense of, again, I think people can come into Zen and be spit out by the forms. It's like, what's all this about and why, it seems like the forms are more important than the people or something, sometimes. And, I think mature sangha or kindness. My religion is kindness, and I think these forms are enormously kind and wonderful. And we can enter them with love and as helpful companions. And that's how we enact sangha together. And then hopefully we go out in the world and we enact all the forms of our lives with an attention and awareness and a sense of the beauty of how we wash a dish and how we take care of the person next to us and how we take care of the people in the little boxes on the screen. And that that's the Bodhisattva vow at the heart of all of this. Okay, and we'll do more of it on Tuesday. So, let's, I will bring the dedication list. Let's each one of you, to your